Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Elevation Podcast. My name is Shawn Riff-Raff, and I am definitely excited about tonight for everybody here joining me. We're going to have some fun. This is Love Month on the Elevation Podcast. I have so many couples coming this month to really talk about love and marriage and those type of things and just give you some good advice and some good counsel and tell you the real about what it's like. And we're just going to have some fun. Tonight, I have the coolest couple, I think. I can say this just in all honesty, and I don't have to lie. But if I couldn't be honest, I probably would lie. But but I say this in all honesty. It's the coolest couple here. They're accomplishing some really cool things, and they're doing some really great work in the Lord. So it's gonna be really, really good. I've got so many things to ask them about their process. I got so many things to ask them about ministry and being married in ministry and that type of thing. So it's gonna be really, really cool. And it's going to be a really good time tonight. So I'm ready. I hope they're ready. I hope all of y'all are ready. I don't know if ready is it, because we already in the studio tripping. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to happen today. Welcome to Elevation Podcast. My name is Shawn Riff-Raff. Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Elevation Podcast. My name is Shawn Riff-Raff, and I am sitting here with Pastors Kymani T. Gilmer, I'm tripping, and Rachel Anna Gilmer, I'm sorry. You know what I meant. Kymani T. Gilmer and Rachel F. Gilmer. What am I talking about? Listen, I don't know what I'm doing.
It's okay. It's all right.
How you guys doing today?
Wonderful.
Rachel Anna Gilmer. I don't know where I want to get the F from.
It must be for the middle name for the soon coming baby or something.
Oh, glory to God.
No.
This podcast is anointed
This
for
is
miracles.
not an announcement.
I'm in the right place.
Oh my God. All right, we need to start over.
Man, I can already tell. Sometimes you can get a vibe when something is going to be fun.
Yes.
So I can really we started off on the right foot already. The first thing I want to ask you guys, I want to get into this. The first thing I want to ask you guys is, where are you from? Because I think that if we don't establish like that you're normal humans, it's gonna be hard for people to listen to.
That's funny.
Hold up! Before we do that, we gotta set some ground rules.
Okay.
There will be no talk as the Holy Spirit is taking us up into the realm of the prophetic.
And we all look to Pastor Gilmer.
I make no promises.
We all look to
I'm
the man
under
of God.
contract.
Our responsibility is to God.
Oh my goodness. No, but actually, that's cool if it happens. But anyway, but I want to have some conversations. Let's start with you, co-pastor. And just where are you from? And just tell me a little bit about you, how you grew up, and what kind of brings you to where you are right now.
So I am originally from Washington, D.C. I am from Southeast. Not Southeast, but Southeast.
Okay.
Very important. I was born and raised there. I was active in ministry at a really young age because my father was a bishop. And, a lot of pastors' kids, you're either really, really involved or you're really, really not. And so I was one of those ones who was really, really involved with my sister. And, I don't know. I felt like I lived a kind of sheltered life because I just, I kept it real simple. It was just church and just beauties and brains. That was it. That was just what I was focused on. And when I got older, I think I started learning more about myself, like me being a person as opposed to just being in ministry.
Sure.
And then I ended up here in Southern Maryland, where everybody likes to commute. Yeah, so that's where I'm from. That's where I am now, and I mean, I've had an eventful life, but it's been kind of quiet too at the same time.
The quiet is good.
Indeed, it
Quiet
is.
is good.
I'm
Actually,
learning that.
I am also learning quiet is good.
Yes.
And then there's me with a loud life.
Exactly.
I was born actually in Jacksonville, North Carolina, a little small town, quaint town in North Carolina. Nothing there but the Camp Lejeune military base and the Walmart Supercenter.
Oh wow.
That's very true, and that's still accurate.
That is very true. Oh, there's also a hospital. So you can serve, shop, or get healed. And so, yeah, that's where I was born. As a very young child, we moved here to Maryland. And so most of my life has been here in Waldorf, Maryland. We moved back to North Carolina with my family. I'm the youngest of 3 boys. And so we moved back to North Carolina for a stint. And then we came back when my grandmother took ill. Both of my parents are only children. And so we came back so we could take care of my grandmother. And we did 4 years until her passing. And I've been here ever since. Well, no, I moved back again, and then I came back again. But anyway, I've been here back on my own since 2014.
14.
That was.
Yep.
And here I am.
Sweet. When did you either one could answer? When did you so you started in ministry from basically from the womb.
Doing something from the womb. Now, I didn't think that I was going to be like a preacher or anything like that, and that was like a little later. But doing something, yeah, that was from like 6. I became the church administrator when I was 8.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't even administrate my own life. Administer my own life.
That's hilarious.
Pastor, how about you? When did all the, when did the ministry come in?
Well, I was born 2 months premature, so I came here early so I could preach.
Oh my God. Sure.
I tease, I kid, I jest. I am a pew baby. I was raised in the church. My home church is Greater Morning Star Apostolic Ministries. That's where I was raised. I was baptized at 7, filled with the Holy Ghost at 10. I've been serving in ministry since about 4 or 5 years old.
Gee.
In some capacity or on some auxiliary. I served in every capacity possible, just about, from the usher board to the choir to the transportation to the custodial ministry to now pastoring.
Yes.
So
sometimes doing them all at the same time.
Right, sometimes doing all of those at the same time in the same day with the same clothes on. So, but it's been a rewarding journey. There's nothing else I'd rather.
That's funny.
How did the two of you, how did you two meet? Where, how did your meeting come about? And tell me your story. Tell me your love story.
She stalked me.
Okay.
First of all, if anybody stalked anybody, you've stalked me.
That would not be the case. What really happened was it's interesting. We saw each other first.
Right.
Glory to God, at a service. We went to a building dedication service in Edgewater, Maryland. The year was 2010 or 11-ish.
10 or 11, yeah.
Yeah, 10 or 11-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were both at that service. Mm-hmm. She was there with her sister, and then I came in with...
Actually, I was there alone. Because you remember who invited me? A friend of mine invited me to that church.
How'd you get there? You were with your sister?
I think my friend brought me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think.
Because she wasn't driving.
I wasn't
That's
driving.
important to know.
Wasn't. It actually is important to know.
So we shared that space and that service. She was with her friend, allegedly, and I came in with my mother,
who I at the time actually thought was like his girlfriend, because his mother is gorgeous and she's very young looking, and they like really complimented each other very well when they walked in. Like
her son, mother and son.
Like, in my head, I'm like, I can't say anything to him. I thought he was really, really cute. And I was
cutest for puppies.
Oh my God.
Sure. We'll just say I liked what I saw, but I thought that his mother was with him. And out of respect, I didn't give it, I tried not to give it much much attention after
And
that.
so the attempt failed because she exchanged quite a number of looks and eyes during the service. And so that was that. We went to greet each other after the service, but when the service was over, excuse me, I was pulled in another direction and we never got to speak.
Yes.
And so that was that. And so about 2 years later, my parents pastored. And so about 2 years later, she came to my church to support a guest speaker that we were having at my church.
That I missed.
Right. They came severely late. We're still working on her punctuality.
I was leaving another service, and I came. I wasn't even supposed to be able to make that service, and I came, and he was on the mic. So like the person that ministered. The person had ministered, and he came up behind them, and he was exhorting the people.
Glory to God.
And I
And
came
so
in
she and her
during that
sister
portion.
came in.
Yes.
And they came in and got right, with me. They had my back. They were pushing me and things like that. And so after service, I just began to greet the congregants, and I greeted her sister. She's going to roll her eyes when I tell this, but I greeted her sister. And I said,
No, you're not.
So wonderful to connect with you. I said, what's your name? And so her sister said, my name is Faith. And so I said, oh, okay, such a pleasure to meet you. And then I went to her and I said, what's your name? She said, I am Prophetess Rachel.
I really don't believe this happened. First of all, disclaimer, I don't believe that actually happened.
Oh, it did. I have a witness.
I don't believe that
In
happened.
the multitude of counsel being confirmed
I
unto
don't
thee.
believe that happened. But I let you tell that because we can show my growth.
Can I phone a friend? And so I saved her number as the prophetess. And
Oh my gosh.
but no, we began to converse back and forth through Facebook, and we established a friendship. And so after we were talking for about 6 months or so, just over social media, I was sitting there on the couch one evening, and it occurred to me that I had seen her before. Now, one of the weird things about my mind is that I remember things according to what people had on. And so
Another weird thing about his mind is that he remembers everything.
Oh, well, God is faithful, which is why I know that you introduced yourself.
Okay, we're moving on. Continue. Since you want to tell the story, continue.
Yes.
For the win. And so anyway,
I got you. Don't worry. Go on.
I got to go home when this is over.
Right. Tread lightly, man of God.
Does the podcast sponsor lodging? And so, but no, we were talking, and then I asked her, I said, random question, 2 years ago, did you happen to be at a building dedication service in Edgewater? And she was like, I don't know, I'm a great prophetess, I'm everywhere, what do you mean? She didn't say
not. Okay.
She didn't say that, but she said, I could have been for who, and so I said who it was for, and I said, let me help jog your memory. I said, you had on a burgundy dress. Excuse me. You had on a burgundy dress with these layers on it. You had on a gold overlay and matching gold heels. I said you also had your hair pulled back and you had a flower on the left side. I said, does that sound familiar? And she was like, okay, I don't know if I'm flattered or creeped out, but she said, but that would be me. And so then we realized we had seen each other. And so instantly I went to go and hear her preach, because she had a service coming up, as she always does. And so I went to hear her preach, and it was supposed to be a mutually reciprocated effort. But it took about 6 or 7 months for her to come hear me preach.
It did. And the reason being is because, as we established, I could not drive.
There's the reason.
But I was too. So this is a testament to my growth.
Yes.
Because one of the things that he says that I introduced myself with my title. Problem is, because I did say that I grew up in church, that was all I knew. So my identity was like completely sold in church. Like that was it. It was all titles. It was all how many times, once I did start ministering the word, it was how many times you could preach or how many people you could pull to a service. And then, if you kind of couldn't keep that level of support, or meet people's expectations, it kind of like damaged your whole
brand.
Your whole brand.
Got you.
And so I remember
Been in that position once or twice.
Yeah, not so fun, And then it's even worse when you realize you've been doing this for a long time and you really don't know who you are.
Yeah.
And so so I remember being too prideful really to tell him that I couldn't drive by myself yet. And my sister, 2.5 years older than I, had her own life and her own vehicle. And, our schedules wouldn't coordinate. So I kept saying I'm going to come, but I couldn't really figure out how to get there because truth was I didn't have a car and I couldn't drive by myself.
Right.
So I finally was able to coordinate with my sister and her vehicle, on her time to bring me to the service. To hear him preach.
Yes.
And that was the day that after he preached, I looked
out
him
of order.
up
Out of order.
and down in the pulpit, and I mouthed to him, "I love you." And
what was the okay? So for you, Pastor, when was the point? When was the point that you were like, "Oh, this is the wife"?
I like this question.
When she first treated me to dinner.
Hey.
I really don't know if there was.
When she paid.
Hey, I support it.
Listen, this bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh.
I support that.
I don't know if there was an exact moment that I could pinpoint. I do know when I began to acknowledge that she was a safe space for me. And for men, generally speaking, and for me specifically, that is very important, that you have a safe space. And when she became a safe space for me not to have to be the prophet, but for me to just be Kymani.
Right.
And she was able to embrace, love, cover, and accept all of that. I knew that there was something more to our relationship. I remember when things began to get serious between she and I, and we had not established an official exclusive relationship.
Okay.
And so I knew that I wanted to take
Or a title. We just
Right.
called each other best friends.
And
We were in denial.
and so what we never did was call each other bro and sis.
I never did that. Yes,
I
and
said,
you never
no,
did
I
that.
shouldn't feel about a sister what I feel about.
Hey, how about it? Okay.
But no, I remember when we were about to take it to or when I wanted to take it to the next level. But I just really didn't have time for any mixed signals or unmet expectations.
Right.
And so I pulled her aside and we had a conversation. And at that point I took a risk, but I sort of just like opened up my vault, if you will, and told her like, this is everything you probably should know about me or could possibly find out about me. And if we're actually going to do this, I don't want anybody to bring something to you that I didn't get to tell you.
That's right.
So here's the good, here's the bad, here's the somewhere in the middle that we're undecided about.
Okay.
Here's what's public knowledge, and here's what could be leaked at any time. And if you're willing to accept that, then we might be on to something. If not, then we can be prophet and prophetess and go in peace.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
no, she looked at me and she said, well, I appreciate you giving me this, this level of honesty and transparency, but she said, nothing about this gives me pause. So let's do it. And here we are, these many years later.
Many.
Still doing it.
But what about you? You said the preaching was the point.
So
What was the point? Not the,
right.
the preaching is like, I like you.
Yes. I think I kind of echo what he said. I don't think there was like this specific point where I was like, oh my God, he's the one. I think I was open to, because I never really dated people growing up. That just wasn't my thing. And
So, hold up. You said you never dated people growing up?
I never dated.
Okay.
I never dated, like, ever. I had one person that I had that I consider an ex, and that was it.
You have one person that you consider an ex, or one person that was an ex?
He's an ex.
Okay, go ahead.
He's an ex. But we still didn't really date. It just was, kind of like a friendship, entertaining the idea that we might get married. Because I never wanted to just date.
I don't have any exes like that. Nope.
I never wanted to be like, I don't know. I think it was the way my sister was on a big campaign when she was growing up about, is it biblical to date? And I think I expressively had a different view on that than she did at the time. And I wasn't sure what my views were. So I just kept them to myself. And I really didn't see anybody that I was really interested in, like, to date. Because I felt like if I dated, I wanted to date to marry. And which I called courting. That's what I was taught. And so I think it was when when Kimani took me into it was his prayer closet, and he told me about his life, and he told me about his aspirations and who he was. It was something about the fact that he was able to see me as a trustworthy person, to be able to tell me that I knew that I probably could trust him just as much as he trusted me just now. And that was a lot of trust. I felt like that was a lot of trust. And so it was a lot of trust. And I think it almost maybe unlocked something in him that he didn't expect to happen, because I don't think he'd ever done that before like that. Yeah. And so I think it was in that moment that I knew, and watching his character with the way that he handled conflict, that was a big thing for me, because he can't
Handled a lot of conflict.
handled a lot of conflict. Yes, handled a lot. And I said, if he can handle conflict, and he's a very much relational person, I said, then there's something here. And so that was kind of like a turning point for me. Yeah.
Oh, so he brought you in his prayer closet. That's how he got him.
That's how. Listen, I'm telling you, that's what you're supposed to do.
Listen,
Bring you in that
that's
closet.
that's the space that gets results.
So, back up. I want to ask you something, because that's a good question. What is dating when you're looking at someone who's trying to get married, who's trying to get onto a level? Is dating biblical? Like, is dating a thing? Because you said your sister was against it.
She was against it.
She was against it.
I think that changed.
Like, was she's against like dinners?
So the way she taught it,
Was she against like food?
Faith, I love you so much whenever you hear this. I really do. Faith taught it at a time where she wasn't dating. We'll say that. She taught at a very young age.
Okay.
And she had very good points. I think that in the Bible days, there was no need for dating. And so your approach to how you handle your relationships have to be taken from more of a spiritual mindset with the inspiration of the word. I personally have a conviction about just loose dating, just dating just to date, because I kind of feel like it always leads to something else. Nobody just dates anybody anymore. They always are doing other things. So, of course, that's against my personal conviction. So, I personally feel that I think that you can date somebody, but my personal conviction is I would rather date somebody with the intent to marry, not just to date, but people loosely date. So that's just my opinion.
And sir,
No, I don't have an issue with dating. I don't think that it is barred of God for you to date. I think that one should use a certain level of caution in dating, and I think you should have a very clear intention when dating.
Yes.
Like she said, she believed in dating with the intent to marry. When you are dating, you need to know, what is your intent. Okay. Is my intent to formulate for this relationship to matriculate into something greater, into a covenant, into a union, into a marriage, or am I just looking for good company?
Right.
Am I looking for platonic companionship? Right. You need to know what your intent is. And I think when you know that, then you can better establish the ramifications where under you date or for which you date.
I agree.
So I got a side question.
Sure.
Ooh.
What if I'm even on the fence about marriage in and of itself?
Then I think dating is a wonderful tool. I think you need to know that for you. And you need to be able to communicate that to the other person, because in dating, you open up your intimacy to that person as the relationship progresses.
Right.
And so you don't want to do yourself or the other party a disservice by you're dating them and you don't quite know where you want this to go.
Exactly.
You need to let them know that, because you don't want, in your case, you don't want her opening up herself to somebody who never intended to do anything with that.
Exactly.
And you don't want to waste your time exposing your vulnerabilities to somebody who never intended to do anything with that.
Likewise. Mm-hmm.
So I gotta, questions are just popping off my head.
Sure.
So either one answer. Does God, does God pick your mate?
I do not believe that he does.
No.
I do not believe that God picks our spouses. I believe that we pick our spouses and heaven sanctions or ordains our decision. Here's why I say that. Bible says in Genesis that Adam woke up and Eve was presented to him. God did not say, hey, Adam, this is your wife. Adam looked at Eve and said, this is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. This is my wife. Adam said Eve was his wife. God said Eve was a helpmeet.
Right.
Adam said Eve is my wife. I think we pick our spouses and heaven sanctions our decision.
Now, so if that be the case, is it because you always hear, I'm waiting for God to send me a man or a woman. I'm waiting for God to send me the right man. Is God sending men?
Well, loaded questions.
I mean,
Well, so again, same text. God presented Eve. So God presents you with opportunities. You make the decision.
I agree with that.
so God is sending men.
He's presenting them. He will make sure that you cross paths with the man.
I agree.
One of the things I see these days in younger people is the idealistic way of thinking that, a knight in shining armor or the perfect match or, the perfect woman will come your direction. And if you don't meet certain quote unquote standards of perfection, then you're not on my level so what is the real about your mate or about marriage? Like what's the do you meet perfect people? Will that ever happen?
No.
Separate and apart from me, no.
And that statement lets you know that the answer is no.
I tease, I kid, I jest. No, I do not think that you meet perfect people. I think that you, as the adage goes, you meet someone who's perfect for you.
Right.
And that's a relative definition. You decide what is perfect for you.
Right.
Which looks like what you're willing to accept, what you're willing to work through, and what you're willing to risk being okay with if that thing doesn't change. If whatever the imperfection is doesn't change.
I also think that you need to be very self-aware.
Yes.
Because I think that one, especially, and I can speak for women, I believe that there are a lot of women that are they lack self-awareness and they end up being very demanding in what they want.
Right.
And I think that you should not compromise your standards, but at the same time, you need to be self-aware of what parts of you are underdeveloped and would negatively impact somebody if you were in a relationship. I remember when we did get married, and I remember vividly the Lord himself having to show me when I was single, living in my parents' house, and all the times that the Lord told me to deal with the emotional issues that I had. And I never dealt with them. And when I was married, I remember, why do I keep dealing with this emotional whatever when it comes to him? And I feel like we keep bumping heads here. And the Lord, I remember, it was almost like he took me up in a dream and he showed me in my bed when I was in my parents' house, laying in the bed. And when he told me, you need to deal with that before you try to get with a man. And I was like, I got time, until I didn't. And so, one thing that I am grateful for, I think at this point, that both of us are very self-aware. It doesn't take me long to apologize because once I see I'm wrong, let me go fix this real quick. But you have to know as a woman what you do and do not bring to the table. You need to know your triggers. You need to know things that haven't been healed or dealt with, and know that it is okay for you to be rejected because you decide not to deal with those things. That doesn't make them wrong. And I think that sometimes women come in with this mindset that, I'm the prize. Well, what are you doing to be a prize? Who are you? Who have you become to be a prize? It's not about cooking, and it's not just about cleaning. It's not just about looking a certain way. It's about who have you developed to be desired, in marriage.
Which brings to another question, which is interesting. When, let's say you have an underdeveloped part of your life, right? Or for lack of better, more appropriate terms, let's say you got baggage. Do you wait to fix those things and say, well, I'm not going to marry this person until you fix your anger issue?
I really think that it depends. Like she said, you can still have a standard. You understand what I'm saying? There's a certain level of baggage that I'm willing to deal with.
Okay.
But you have to know the difference between something that might be something that might be considered baggage, that might be a work in progress, and then something that is a character flaw.
Exactly.
Now, if you're
Absolutely.
a liar,
Well said.
that's a character flaw, and I'm not willing to deal with that.
Right.
Because I can't establish covenant based upon a falsehood. You know.
Right.
And so I need to understand that that's not baggage. Oh, he just has a tendency to lie. That's not baggage.
It's not.
That's a character flaw. You're a liar.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's not me judging you.
No.
God told Adam, if you see a beast, give it a name. You're a liar. And I'm not going to establish vows with a liar because you're relying on the altar. You understand what I'm saying? And so you need to understand what is baggage that we can work with, if albeit you're willing to work with it. Because there's another thing. After you identify it, I don't want you to just be able to identify your flaws, your triggers, your baggage.
Right.
I want to know if that's something that you're going to work on.
Right.
That's the difference in somebody saying, this is a sensitive area for me, but I'm working on being healed in that area. And I'm committed. I'm committed to refining who I am in that capacity.
Right.
As opposed to, well, that's just who I am. You can take it or leave it.
Exactly.
Well, option 2, counselor. I'm going to go ahead and leave that. I'm going to go ahead and leave that.
I know that's right. I agree with that.
Option 2.
Yeah, option 2. Option 2.
I'll just leave that.
And so, because I was thinking, like when a person, let's say wholeness, a lot of people think that whole marries whole. Do you agree or disagree with that phrase?
I agree with it to a certain extent. I think that being married teaches you how to become one with someone else, but you can't bring half of yourself into anything. Bishop Jakes talks about in a message, and you probably can help me with the name of it, but he did a sermon some years ago, and he said, you have never gotten a real result out of anything you've done in your life because you've never given yourself 100% to anything.
Right.
That's called commitment, that sermon.
Thank you. See, I knew he could give it to me. Commitment. And oh my God, that is so good. And sometimes if you have problems with commitment, just hearing him talk, it just makes you feel like, oh my God, I need to repent. I need to get myself together. But you never should intentionally give yourself 50%, 75%.
Right.
You want to give yourself 100%, and you do actually want to be whole. Because if you're giving broken pieces, then something's going to be missing, and the other person is going to have to make up for what you didn't rectify in your life. I'm not promoting that we should be perfect, or that there won't be emotional baggage or financial baggage or anything from your past that might not come up. It's going to happen. It's life. But it shouldn't, on the scale of life, it shouldn't outweigh either your ability, willingness, or proven methods of change and course of action to do something different.
And if I could, what I would also add to that is, when I hear you say whole marries whole, I think of it in terms of the fact that you shouldn't come into a relationship for codependency upon the other person.
Yes.
And so I would not use whole in the sense of as my wife said, perfection.
Right.
Right.
As much as I would use whole in the sense of I'm not using the other party to fill a void.
Exactly.
Because,
Very well
right,
said. Well
if we
said.
were going to do that, then we could have established a business transaction.
Exactly.
And I could have gotten paid. If I were going to be your therapist,
Right.
hello somebody.
Hello.
If I were going to be your therapist, then we could have entered into an exclusive agreement, and I could have gotten paid. But if I'm doing this night after night for free, something's going to have to give.
Something gonna have to give.
Again, option 2, counselor. I'm going to go ahead and leave that.
I agree.
Well, speaking of getting paid,
Glory to God.
ah,
That was my
Yes.
next question.
yes, no, should I be looking for someone? Should a person who is looking for a relationship and trying to get married, blah 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 blah, is it wrong to look for the money?
Define look for the money.
I can't marry nobody unless they got the guap.
I
do you mean,
I
define?
don't think that I would say that that one should look for the money as much as I
Take it into
think
consideration.
that you should be aware of the money. Oh my shot. You don't want to marry someone and think that they have an 800 credit score and are bringing home 6 figures, and you get married and realize that the day after the wedding their car is about to be repoed and their credit score is actually less than what they weigh. You understand what I'm saying? So you should be aware of the money, and I think finances should definitely be discussed pre-marriage. The top 3 reasons statistically that marriages sever are number 1 for communication, number 2 for finances, and number 3 infidelity. And so you should talk about the money
Right.
before someone cheats. And a 3-fold cord is not easily destroyed.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's funny.
When we look at there's a lot of what's the realest thing you can tell a person about marriage? Like, what's the realest? You guys are younger, and how long you been married?
Forever.
It's been 5 years this year.
Yep.
It'll be 5 years this year.
Okay, so you guys are younger. You still kind of honeymooning. But I know that's probably the wrong word. But in the 5 years that you guys have been married, what is the realest thing you could tell somebody? Like, what's the marriage isn't pretty? What is the marriage ain't pretty when you gotta.
When you have to live out the vows. When you have to live out the vows. I think when we first got married, we kind of got married in the midst of trauma. Because my dad passed.
Trauma happened along the way.
No, well, for me, it was still trauma because my dad passed 3 months before we got married. So I was still grieving, but I didn't really grieve until after we got married. Because then we came from the honeymoon, the dust settled, and then I was depressed. And I had never experienced depression like this before, ever. I didn't even know what it was. And so I also felt like, I thought we were doing really good financially when we first got married. I felt like we had gone through a lot of things. His family had gone through things. My family, of course, had gone through things. We had gone through things together, helped each other through a lot.
Right.
I'm like, we went through a lot for the beginning of our marriage. I'm thinking, I'm going to get a break. No. When you have to live out those vows, for better or for worse, when I'm being the worst, not necessarily just life, but, me bringing this dark cloud of depression in our house. Hating my job. I hated my job. I cried all the way to work. I cried on my lunch break. I would go in the bathroom and take extended times in the bathroom and cry. I would leave work, cry all the way home. I would have this thing that I would do. I would get home and sit on the edge of the bed, and I would just be sitting there with my shoulders kind of shrumped over. My husband would come in and he would see me in the bedroom. He would know what that meant. and he would just not even want to be in the room because he knew. But he knew that if he left the room, I would feel like, oh, I'm by myself. But you know, I'm not who I am. I'm not myself. You know. So when you have to live out the vows, for better or for worse, and you go through financial struggles, rich or for poor, you know, in sickness and in health, both of us have went through some kind of sickness. You know, he went through a surgery in 2014. No, we were married, so it was 2000. The nose surgery when you had a sinus surgery. I think it was like 2000. It's 20, so 2016.
What year is it?
It was
16.
18.
Was it 18? Oh my gosh, I was way off. I was sitting there looking at him, you know, because he had his sinus surgery, and that wasn't that big of a deal to some people, but I was scared. You know, I'm like, are you breathing? Because you breathing out your mouth. So I couldn't go to sleep because I don't know if you breathing. And then, you know, just living out the vows is a lot. And then also living out vows when you're in ministry is a lot because you're a leader. And, you know, you have to learn the art of using wisdom in how much you let people into your life.
That's right.
And everybody cannot handle your struggles. You have to struggle and lead and not let them know you struggle and deal with their struggles while you're struggling. And do that effortlessly if you can. And so I think living out the vows is really the ugliest part. And everybody is required to do it. And if you don't do it, you're just bailing on what the covenant really is.
Ditto. I would echo those sentiments. I'll say two things and I'll retire. Number one, when I think living out the vows, the way I always say it is this. When you think of those vows in the traditional sense, the for richer or for poor, in sickness and in health, for better or worse. The for richer or for poorer can happen to you. Right?
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
You could, your company, your job could downsize, you're terminated, and now poorer is your lot. But it happened to you.
Right.
Sickness and in health, sickness can happen to you. You know, no one asks to get a terminal illness. You could be living your life in perfect health, and then boom, sickness happens to you.
Right.
But for better or worse, sometimes you can be the worst.
That's right.
And so you make worse happen. And having to live out the covenant that you established before God and man can be a challenge, which is why, leading to point number 2, the way that I say talk about marriage.
I thought about this.
Is I say marriage is, here's my quote, marriage is the hardest work that I've ever done. By the same token, it is the most rewarding work that I've ever done. Because it is not all dismal. And when people say, and this is not an accusation to you, but most times when people say, let's talk about the real truth, they want it to be something negative. And the real truth can still be a positive truth. So it is hard work, sure, but it's rewarding work at the same time. You need to know that it's hard work going in because marriage is not for children.
Absolutely.
Marriage is not for the immature.
Right.
Marriage is not for the I almost used the word. For the faint at heart, for the underdeveloped mind, character or heart. Glory to God. Marriage is hard work. It will require something of you. You have not joined together with that person until you have joined to the point where you've sacrificed yourself.
Right.
The Bible even talks, we always talk about the woman submitting to the husband, but the Bible says, submit yourselves one to another.
Right.
You haven't married until both wills have had to succumb to the other.
That's so true.
You haven't married until both of you have had to lay down what you thought it was about to look like and deal with what it actually looks like. And be committed to ensuring that you get back to what you said you wanted it to look like.
Exactly.
Remember why you did it.
Right.
I want to ask you about something that floats around the church, and I don't believe anybody actually knows what it means. What does it mean to be equally yoked?
I think I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think to be equally yoked, more often than not, people say, or they only give that definition to
marriage.
Talking about, yes, in marriage, but talking about someone saved being married to someone unsaved.
Oh, yeah.
But I stand to tell you, y'all can both be saved and you still be unequally yoked.
Unequally yoked. Absolutely.
You understand what I'm saying? You can still be unequally yoked. And so when I think of equally yoked, I think that it speaks to an awareness of both parties, like she has already mentioned, an awareness of both parties, and there being a commonality concerning tenets, foundational tenets. Your what is our spiritual discipline? What is our financial belief? What is our what are our non-negotiables?
Right.
What are our character flaws?
I agree.
What are our character commitments? You know what I'm saying? What things matter? Because if your priority isn't my priority, we won't see eye to eye, and thereby we're unequally yoked. You understand what I'm saying? If if your priority is building a business and my priority is building a home, then we could be unequally yoked.
Right.
If your priority is popularity and my priority is integrity, we're going to be unequally yoked, because there will be things that you're willing to compromise that are non-negotiables for me. And inversely or conversely, the same could happen. And so to be unequally yoked, it includes, hands down, spirituality, but it goes far beyond just whether or not the person believes the same doctrine you believe.
I agree. That's well said.
I've studied it one day, and because I whenever someone says, I promise you, whenever someone has ever said unequally yoked, I always think about eggs.
Yeah, I have to.
And and I just have never understood the phrase. I just
Because you had the wrong yoke. But
I never understood the phrase. Then I realized it was the yoke of an ox.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Let's change your yoke.
Yes. Different kind of yoke.
I didn't really even know what that was.
It's
Until,
okay. It's all right.
I'm just saying. I thought it was breakfast, and
This is why Bible study matters. People
Hello.
of God,
Go
get to your
Bible
midweek service.
study.
Get to your midweek
Go
service.
to your
man,
weekend
I
encounter.
promise you, and it was well into an adult before I realized that we
Wow.
weren't talking about eggs.
Wow.
And
I was
or
thinking
I
about
thought it
my
was
single
always
dishes.
a person's their excuse to judge somebody. We're not on the same level type conversation.
Okay.
Or you're not on my level, or you're not in my league, or that type of thing has always been the use of the term unequally yoked. Now, that has always been incorrectly used to me. It's just anything used as a way to judge another person is probably not biblical. And so,
Right.
then I learned it wasn't about eggs.
I'm so glad you learned
Well, I'm
that.
very glad you learned this about eggs. I'm
was
also
well
very
into it,
leery
though.
of anybody, though, who, seriously speaking, who makes the statement in the family of,
You say excuse me to the mic.
well, to you concerning your equipment. I don't need an input.
Listen, okay.
Excuse me, buddy. Sorry.
So very sorry.
Sorry, guys.
I'm leery of anyone who uses a statement somewhere in the family of someone is not on my level, because, and this is a personal experience, when God humbles you one time, if God ever has to humble you once, you typically learn how to stay humble.
Right.
And anybody who, with the wrong spirit, makes that statement, and oftentimes if it's said in the way that you just said it, citing other persons, when it's said like that, there's an alarming sense of passive pride there that concerns me, because whatever level you think you have attained or that you think you're operating on, I've learned that God can humble you real quick. So I don't I don't really care how far the Lord takes me.
Yeah.
I'm never going to walk around with that. They're not on my level, because whatever
Don't do
level
that.
I'm on, I can lose real
You
quick.
can lose. Say that.
I can lose
He
real
can
quick.
take it and snatch it right from under your
there's
feet.
there's a preacher that I know, and at one point this preacher was traveling the world, literally traveling the world, and preaching all the time. And now this person's calendar is empty, and I think they are like a med tech at the hospital or something like that. And someone asked me one time, whatever happened to so-and-so's ministry? Because they were going and going. And I said, listen, I don't know. I said, I have no clue, but I'm just trying to work my grace while I got it. You know, and that's the mindset you need to keep. Let me work this while I have it, because whenever God takes his hand off of you, he doesn't have to put it back on.
Come on.
And so you have to keep that at the forefront and keep you very, very humble.
I agree.
Whatever level you think you on, you can lose.
You can. It can't be snatched from you.
Yeah.
You know, I want to ask you. We've got a few minutes left. I want to ask you about being in ministry together. Typically, you find a pastor and a first lady. This we don't. We find a pastor and a co-pastor. What is that like to have to do, to do all? It's kind of like we spend pretty much all of our time together. Like when I get home, I'm still working. Like we're building this thing, and like what is ministry? I think a lot of couples want to be quote unquote power couples, and is ministry together easy, or is it what is it like?
Would you like me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. I think that I mentioned that we both do our best to be self-aware. My husband is very self-aware. He is very self-aware when he is having an off day. He's very self-aware when the Lord is dealing with him about something. Every area of his life, he's very self-aware. I am grateful for that, because that is not the case for just, everybody isn't self-aware. At the same time, I think that we kind of are in the process of growing together in this, because this is, the church is, like 4 or 5 months, going on 5 months now. And, but we've been in ministry ever since we've known each other. It's a little, I think for me, I kind of have an easy pass, because my mother was so submissive as a wife, and that's all I saw. And so if anything I know how to do is be submissive as a wife. And I know how to take his lead, just follow his lead. I think that as we grow, we're figuring out what that looks like for us. Likewise, it can be, there are a lot of different things that you run into when it comes to ministry, being married, and both of you all are in ministry. Things like people trying to bring comparison, in the midst of your relationship. And then sometimes you bring in comparison in your own self. I mean, my husband's ministry is very direct. It's very hands-on. It's very in your face. It's very, this is your name. This is who you with. This is what's going on. And this is what God is about to do. Mine isn't as direct. It is a little bit more subtle. My prophetic gift comes out in the word. And if you don't get it, you just, it's like the Washington Post, you just don't get it. And a lot of times, even in our process of growing together, I have found myself just comparing my gift and who I am to him, because he is widely received. And, he's a large personality. He is influential and things like that. And so it is a growing process. It keeps you humble, number one. 2, it keeps you in the presence of God. And it'll keep you in his face. It also will consequently keep you in check with your spouse. It is not a healthy relationship to be able to minister with someone that you can't communicate with. And so it kind of presses you out. And if you really love God and you've really been with him, he's going to tell you about yourself. And you can't leave his presence and not fix whatever that was with your spouse. Right. And so it is a humbling walk. But I think that I'm a better person because of it. I feel like I do have it I have a blessing to be able to walk in ministry in marriage, because it keeps me, both sides keep me in check. My relationship with him as a wife to a husband keeps me in check with following him as my pastor. But I have so much respect for him and his gift and the oil on his life that he also can pastor me. But he also doesn't have to pastor me at home. Right. He's my husband at home. Right. And then I can supply his needs at home.
Oh, bless his name.
Thank you, Jesus. There's a different way you got to put those hats on and take them off and things like that. So it's humbling, but it also keeps you mature, and it keeps you in the presence of God, I feel like.
Certainly. I think that one of the things that was important for us in regards to the question, what does it look like, is that we decided that we would allow it to formulate authentically. And so we decided not to try to align ourselves with or ascribe to any pre-existing template. You know, we decided that we would allow this to be authentic to us, because God can't anoint who you impersonate; He has to anoint who you are. And so we decided that we would allow it to be authentic to us.
Okay.
And so there are some days where, like she said, we have to figure out, hey, what does this part look like for us? You know, does it look like, we have to be careful to make sure that we don't take home moments and make them church moments. We don't take
That's difficult sometimes.
That we don't take business moments
Yes.
and make them church moments. That we are mature enough to compartmentalize.
Right.
While maintaining fluidity where necessary, but compartmentalize our day so that our efforts are concentrated and not loosely spread about, thereby making results askew.
Right.
And so, but it is a blessing, though, to be able to have in her a co-pastor, because marrying a preacher was never something that was on my wish list. I didn't have to. Meaning, I didn't say, God, please send me a preacher. I gotta marry a preacher. What mattered to me was that I married someone with the capacity
Right.
for where I'm going.
Right.
And so, never wanted to have the marriage where, I'm pastoring a church, but I can't even talk to you about spiritual matters.
Right.
You sitting here like, you talking about God again? Yeah, I am. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Reasons why dating is necessary.
Right. Exactly.
So it mattered that we had the capacity, or that I had the capacity in her to go where we needed to go. And so what that looks like for us is, again, intentionality. It's figuring out what moment, should look like what moment. And making sure that we both know those focuses, and we both know what's on the agenda for the day, for the time, for the season, for the hour.
So I've got two more things.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. So the first thing is kind of philosophical. What if there was one take home that you could share to both of you? Individually to the both of you. If there's one take home that we've got however many people looking really into marriage and wanting to know just about it. If there was one thing that you can take home and say, if I can't leave you with anything, I want to leave you with this. What would that one thing be?
Concerning marriage?
I would say to always put God first and value His opinion about your life.
I'm sorry, value whose opinion?
God's opinion.
Okay, go ahead.
About your life. So much so that it controls your life.
Okay.
Because I believe that knowing who you are in Him, knowing your proclivities, knowing where God has you and what He's doing in your life is essential for you being connected with another person. Likewise, you need to know your triggers and let God deal with those things. All of those things that we talked about. But I think even with me being married, that one of the things that my mother taught me when I was really young, she said, baby, marriage is a triangle. And she said, if you can't get to Him, go to God. Because the thing that holds y'all together is your relationship with God. And there have been so many times that, we've been in tight places in our lives and I couldn't get to Him. And the only thing that saved us was our relationship with God.
Yeah.
And He got us both together. So, keep Him first. Be very self-aware of who you are. And make sure that you maintain open communication with God and with the person that you are either dating or with your spouse or if you're courting or whatever. But make sure you keep that open relationship and let God be able to tell you that you're wrong and you not hate Him for it.
Wow.
Be okay with that.
Definitely. Excuse me, I agree with the truth of the aforementioned. I would also tag. Why do you always laugh when I say?
Because I need a dictionary to figure out what you're saying. I'm like, is it possible to Google that real quick? I'm like, I know people are sitting there like,
You should hear him in an argument. He uses the same kind
Me argue?
Well, we don't, because I don't want to have to carry on. Hold on. What did you just call me?
I agree with that. Since she spoke about God, I'll speak more to the person. I think that what I would give you as a takeaway is to know the person.
Yes.
And know the person, know him, know her in their fullness.
Yes.
And I think that is so important.
Yes.
I think we don't spend enough time learning the intimacy of a person. And that has nothing to do with intercourse.
It
I'm
really
talking
doesn't.
about the innermost part of a person. And you need to spend time knowing that person and determine if what you know about that person and what that person knows about you, again, I spoke to it already, is a safe place. If I could use a biblical reference, the Bible never says that when Samson cheated with Delilah, the Bible never says that Samson was physically attracted to Delilah. Bible never mentions her physique, never mentions she being voluptuous,
Does not.
never mentions, 20 inches of Remy down her back. The Bible said that in Delilah, Samson found a place to lay his head. And so what matters in marriage is that you always know that at the house you have a home.
Very well said.
well, that she has her own home.
And then there's Shawn.
Oh, God.
I've got one more thing. So everybody that comes to the Elevation Podcast gets a gift.
You need my Cash App?
No. You guys' gift has to be different because I've given you all a lot of gifts.
Oh, that's so nice.
Hold up.
Oh, we get gifts.
We got gifts.
Get one collective gift.
Oh, do we get to open it right now?
Yes, you have to.
Okay, all right.
You want me to open it?
Yeah, you can open
Be
it.
careful opening it. I'm just saying. I didn't pay a lot for it. I'm just saying.
I'm so encouraged. I'm flattered.
I'm kidding.
I see you couldn't wait to put that part out there.
It's not me. It's not meowing.
Thank
Not
God,
me,
because I would be giving it right back.
It's a kitten.
Oh, how cute. Return to sender.
I'm only being careful because I'm on camera.
I know. It's all right. And we can't.
It's fragile too.
Oh, Jesus. I know. Let's be even more careful. I'm so careful. I ain't even going to touch it.
Thank you, Jesus. Father, we bless you. Okay. Oh, look at us. Looking like we look.
Oh, look at us.
Where's the camera? Which camera? It's not a catfish. I really look like that.
No, but check out that your dreads are like super longer than that.
I mean, well, when you live holy.
Take care of your scalp.
To anybody whose locks are not growing, you gotta check their lifestyle.
Oh my God.
Oh,
Celebration
nice.
of love
Thank
from the
you.
Elevation
thank
Podcast.
you.
Thank
It's
you.
beautiful. It will go up on the wall. I know
Yes,
exactly where to
indeed.
put it too.
Oh, glory.
Oh, I love it.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it.
Well, thank you
Oh,
guys.
well, hold on. Well, it's only right if I present you with the gift in return.
My Cash App.
Is irrelevant.
Oh my God.
And so your gift.
Wow. Wow.
And on that note,
Oh, wow.
Man, it's been great with you guys. It's been fun. I know everybody enjoyed it.
Likewise.
I'm glad you guys were able to come and just share some some really vital things, and hopefully we can people were listening and they can sort of elevate their lives from this point on.
Yes, indeed.
And I really do. I appreciate both of you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
everything you are doing, have done.
Thank you so
And
much.
yes, and we will do this again next
Looking
year.
forward to it. Yes.
And perhaps it won't be the day that we'll take a moment of silence for Sister Houston.
Yes, Sister Houston.
And that's enough.
Horrible.
The statements and views of the Shawn Riff-Raff do not reflect the views of the prophet or the co-pastor.
Okay. Or the River Church for that matter. Thank you, Jesus.
Listen, we love Whitney.
Yes, we do.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the Elevation Podcast here on ShawnRiffRaff.com. We on every Tuesday, 7:30. It's the same thing. It's really, really cool. Thank you guys so much. Check you next time. Peace.